Hey everyone, glad to see that you're back. In this tutorial, we're going to cover one of the most essential parts of Worldmachine, namely coloring. In front of us, you can see an already pre-generated mountain by me. This file will be up on my Patreon. I will not be explaining how to make this in this tutorial. It is important to see that this terrain has used multiple natural devices, such as the erosion, the strata, a snow, and a thermal weathering. We will be using these outputs of these devices for our coloring. However, first we're going to start with the most simple coloring. We're going to use a selector, the slope selector, and we're going to connect them to the tree. From this, we're going to lower the fall off, since when we're dealing with coloring, we want hard masks. We lower it to 0. But this is the highest value, and now for the lowest value, this would be the value at which the grass will appear at a maximum angle. I usually like to put it between 40 and 50 degrees. And now we have made a mask that only takes any angle between 40 and 50 degrees. This will become our rock mask. Now we're going to combine two color generators, both colors are your choosing, by using a combiner device. Again, you can use a chooser, but as mentioned in tutorial 2, it's easier to use an average device since that gives you more freedom in choosing your specific parameters. We're going to put this all the way at 1. Now since the slope device is selecting our slopes, we would like the first color to be our grass color and the second color to be our stone color. For this tutorial, I'm going to go for a gray stone. If we now look at it using an overlay view, we can see that the terrain already looks colorized, but it's a bit boring. We would like to have some snow on here, some talus, and some erosion. Perhaps even use the strata device. The latter we're going to use right now. We're going to go to the strata device. We're going to look at the strata layers by pressing on them, or the strata exposure. The strata layers show an independent mask of the strata layers, whereas the strata exposure only shows the areas where it's been affected. For this tutorial, we will be using the strata exposure, since this is the terrain which has the terraces on. The other part of the rock doesn't have any terraces. We're going to use a small nifty trick, since if we look at it, this is essentially a black and white image. So we can use the color and the strata exposed layer together by using a combiner device. The primary input is the color, secondary input is the exposure, and we can play around with this a bit. Usually I go for a root setting, since this gives the terrain its original color and then exposed rocks get a slightly whiter look. This will already result in the following. Here you can see that the white rock has been amplified and the normal rock, which doesn't have any strata layers, isn't edited. I really like this, so let's continue to the next step. It is important to note that I'm using this root device in front of combining it with my grass color. You have to see that the select slope or any mask you give it as an input comes at the very end. So for instance, now a question to you. If you were going to add a float to this terrain of, let's say, dirt, would you put it in front of this average device or behind it? The correct answer would be to put it in front of it, since then it doesn't override the rock. So we're going to do that using another combiner device. We put it at an average value of 1. We're going to select a bit of a darker color, since more rain is captured here, and a bit more of a brown color. As an input, I'm simply going to use an absolute mask of the flow. Again, you can check this file out on my Patreon so you can see exactly what I'm doing. But in essence, it should be exactly the same by using the output of the erosion device. Let's combine it to our combiner, and we can see by pressing on F, opening the select height, the effect of our flow. Let's add quite a lot of flow, so I would say that this is a good value. Let's go in the overlay view and see what the result is. As we can see, the darker patches are indeed on the erosion sensitive areas. That's really nice. Now, next is the snow. Again, we would like to add the snow before the rock, but after the flow, since we do not want these grassy looks on top of our snow fields. So we move it a bit back. We add another combiner in between. We're going to use another color. We're going to put it at white, since snow, to my understanding, is white, but please correct me. And we're going to use the snow mask output. However, as we can already see, this mask isn't absolute. It's really blurry around the edges. So let's use a select height device in between and put it at a maximum. Now we can play around with the lower bound of this device to see how much snow we would really want. I'm going to put it somewhere in the middle. Now our overlay view will already look like this. And you can very clearly see the effects of the snow inside here and the erosion flow next to it, since in essence the snow device will also use the flow. Lastly, we would like to add some talus to this world. We have done so by using the thermal weathering device and plugging it into a smooth max. This is simply an extra step by getting some more erosion looking like settings on the talus. However, we're going to use an absolute difference between the output of the thermal weathering and the input of the thermal weathering. And we're going to use a select height once again to select the amount of talus that we would like to see. I'm going to put mine at 10 meters. Now I'm going to put this behind the rock, since I do not want the rock values to override this. I'm going to input it as a mask, and for the color I'm going to use a slider darker value. As we can now see in the overlay view, this would be our result. This terrain showcases the stratas, normal rock faces, the flows, the thermal weathering, and of course the snow. It is funny to look at the differences the select slope device makes. So again, we press F while being on the overlay view, we open the select slope, and we just play around with this a bit. As you can see, if we put this at a high value, let's say 65 degrees, the terrain will be much greener and only the strata layers are being affected. I would like to end it over here. I hope to see you at my next tutorial. Also make sure to check this file out on Patreon. Have a good one.